to one more of our climate change and challenges of development lecture series that Laura convened with my attempts to support her. It has been, I think, a great initiative to think about climate change in the context of different approaches. And one thing that Laura wanted to do is to have very different perspectives and very different disciplines from economic, which we have in the past, all the way to more ecological. We have social movements as well. But until now, we have not thought about actually five in the links between universities and climate and the teaching, the implications that it should have on teaching. This is really important for us in the context of our degrees. It's important for Oxford, I think, and therefore it's great that Cecile is coming, and it's great that Severin decided to suggest the invitation also for them. So I only have a good thing of welcoming and take credit for nothing, but still it's nice to be in front of all of you and then Severin the work. So thank you so much for coming. And the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. It's my honor to present Cecile, who has co-founded this initiative in near Paris, the Transition Campus, or Consider Transition, which I was told you have to say in French, it's a trademark. But before founding the campus, she's still the scientific director of a research program on business and development at a business school in France called ESSEC. And she's been teaching there social and business ethics, and also the School of Engineers, l'École des Mines. You may have heard about the elite schools in France that trains engineers. But she has conducted research on corporate social responsibility in Mexico, India, Bangladesh, Nigeria, and Indonesia. So she comes from a kind of development background. She's published mainly in French, although articles in English, on the ethical responsibilities of multinationals, the role of private actors in front of injustice, and 20 propositions to reform capitalism. Cecile started her career at the ESSEC in business, wanted to raise the ladders of becoming a manager, and then had a little questioning and changed everything. And she then studied philosophy and went teaching philosophy at a high school for a couple of years, and then did a PhD in political sciences, linking ethics and background in management and business. And so a couple, 5 years ago, she had the intuition that we need to respond to climate change in a way that is radical, that the urgency requires something different. And so she did more of this initiative. So the floor is yours, Cecile, to tell about this experience, the challenges, and also how maybe Oxford can learn, and what we can do here in Oxford to raise the challenge that is quite unprecedented. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and I'm really very pleased and honored to be with you tonight. I already apologize for my English. I hope it will be okay. I will do my best. And so I will try to present the of the campus, but linking it with the issue of reforming higher education institutions. And also it has to see with transforming our economic models and our lifestyles, at least for wealthy people all around the world, and to meet the big issues of the ecological and social transition, what we call at the campus the great transition, in order to show that we have to link ecological and social issues, and of course economic and cultural, also and political. It has to see also with democracy and the way we try to become responsible citizens at different levels. So just one word about the campus. So I co-created the campus 5 years ago, and the idea was to combine what, in a way, to be an eco place and an eco campus, a place where I choose to live with mostly young professionals who are interested in trying to show what it means to reduce our carbon and ecological footprints. And we try to experiment a sober lifestyle, but also a convivial lifestyle. And so it's a place where a community lives on site, and we welcome both professors, scholars, students, and professionals for mostly short, for the time being, short stays, but we have also designed a 2-month program where we welcome students who are doing what we call in French a césure,
Interruption.
Yeah, and young professionals interested who are reflecting on changing their professional orientation and who join us. And we have volunteers who come and who spend like 1 month, 2 months. And the one with whom I live in the community of the campus, they are committing themselves for at least 1 year in the project. And so we want to be, like I said, an eco place, an eco campus, and a place that networks with institutions, with companies, with associations, to try to promote ways to transform our economic models and lifestyles. We are uniting our efforts and trying to see what could be done at from different institutions. And I would like to present you what we call a 6 gates approach. In fact, that's what is we met 4 years ago. After 1 year on site, we met the French Minister for Higher Education, and she asked us to work on a common base of knowledge and skills for the Great Transition. So we gathered like 70 scholars from different disciplines, and also some professionals, some students, the ones who are activists in the French Association pour un réveil d'écologie, for those who may know this association. And we began the work before the COVID and the first lockdown. And we published this book 2.5 years ago. And we worked with also groups of scholars who were interested not only working for this handbook, but also to publish some short books integrating social and ecological issues in different disciplines. And so we have 12 groups, and for the time being, 6 of the 12 textbooks who have been published, one on pedagogy. And I will, after explaining the 6 gates approach that we used to write this handbook, I will present our reflection on pedagogy. And there is another book on the transforming campuses in different universities. And one other textbook is about public health in transition. One other about management and management science issues. Another one on social science issues. Another one on living science issues. So I will say a word on this. So about the 6 gates. So it's this common base of knowledge and competencies. So that's just what I presented. I would like to just mention the fact that we have been sponsored by the Laudato-Si Research Institute to translate in English a synthesis, a 60 pages synthesis of the Great Transition Handbook, and it's available online. So if you're interested, and if you don't read French, you can have access to this synthesis. And we hope to get some funding to translate the whole handbook in English. But for the time being, we have this guide. And to say a word before entering into more details into each gate. In fact, our purpose was to show that we have different entry points or gates or doors into the great transition. And we decided to use Greek words, the Greek words that are in the words ecology and economy. So you find oikos, nomos, and logos, and we added ethos, praxis, and dynamis. Of course, with the scholars with whom we conceived the handbook, there were many questions, because why do you use Greek words? It's not, maybe it can be understood as a too Western perspective. So maybe we could discuss this. But we thought that it was interesting. In fact, from a mnemotechnic perspective, and so also because it showed that so oikos has to see with diagnostic for the great transition. Ethos, of course, how you reflect on justice, just institutions, how to live well with one another. So discernment, the second gate. The third one, nomos, has to see with regulations, governance issues. The fourth one with logos, it means narratives, rationalities, not only techno-scientific rationality, but also symbolic rationality. Then the fifth one, praxis, of course, action, different levels of actions, different actors. And finally, dynamis, what we could consider eco-psychology or eco-spirituality, how to reconnect oneself to the others, to nature. So you have these 6 gates. Well, because I will present some pedagogical tool, I would propose you to stand up, if you agree, and to gesture these doors, these gates, to begin with. I don't know whether the people who are online, but maybe you don't see me, I don't know. Probably not real. So if I stay here, I will make a gesture and the word, and you can repeat what I do. And I think it's a very good way to remind you of these gates. So oikos is the word, our common word, the world. So oikos. Ethos is to balance, to discern. Ethos. Nomos, you have the way, so the rules. Nomos. Logos, you speak the narrative, so logos, you speak one another. And praxis, you change things, you go to one way to the other, praxis. And the dynamis, you come from the heart to the soil, to the others, and to. So maybe we can do it again, just so. And you can speak with me. So oikos, ethos, nomos, logos, praxis, and dynamis. Thank you. So this last week for 1,400 people and the professional forum for professional training, and has booked just after our minister for education, and people were very surprised. But then for the next 2 days, they were speaking to me about this. So, well, just another small exercise, just a few seconds to ask yourself, what is your preferred for your entry gate among the 6? Of course, as I will just explain, the idea is that each one of us and collectively, we have to go through these 6 gates. But nevertheless, we can see, maybe acknowledge that we have one preferred entry gate. And I will mention the different gates, and you will raise your hand when it's your preferred entry gate. So, oikos.
Can we have 2? Or
No, just one, but they're all friends. Yeah. I have the same problem. But so oikos, a few, yeah. Ethos, nomos. I don't know whether online there are. Logos, Praxis, dynamis. Okay, well, usually almost all the gates were mentioned, and it's interesting to see that we don't have the same entry gates. And I remember when we were beginning to write down the handbook, one professor at AgroParisTech, our engineering school on agronomy, was telling me, well, you know, Cecile, well, in the handbook, we are going to begin with oikos and we end with dynamis. But we have really to explain to the readers that, in fact, we can begin the reading of the handbook with one other gate, because she was explaining her own experience with students, that for some of them, praxis, for example, is the key. And sometimes, if we want to help people be more convinced on some issues, we have to reflect on the best ways to accompany them. And that's why, in terms of pedagogy, we thought that it was very interesting to propose these journeys through the 6 gates and help people realize that sometimes they are really, in French we say œillères, where they just blinkered, or very narrow way to look at things, and we have to expand the way we look at things with others. And if I go to so we have these 6 main chapters of the handbook. So it's related to different fields, and then you have skills. And I don't know whether in England you speak so much of skills as in France, but now all the curricula in French are supposed to be linked to the skill that you acquire when you conceive a curriculum. So that's why we, and I will go back to this issue of skills at the end of my presentation. So quickly, I would like to show you some tools we use when we present the gates, but then, of course, in the handbook, we have offered many references, and the idea is to give scholars, professors, but also directors of or president of universities, all tools, and then each one, of course, freely choose how he presents and how he integrates some of these tools in his courses. So oikos, just show you the 3. Each time I will show the 3 main sections in each chapter, and then you have the skills that are related to what we try to propose in terms of reflection within the chapter. So of course, this diagnostic is to show, but I think you are aware of the issues, so I will go quickly through this aspect more related to climate sciences. But we have, well, unfortunately, I graduated from ESSEC Business School, and I've set up a research program. And at ESSEC, they say that they want to do a lot of things in order to change the curriculum. But frankly speaking, for the time being, and I think in business schools all over the world, we are not yet up to the challenges. So and there are very few courses on climate, on biodiversity, on courses. And even at the Ecole des Mines de Paris, the engineering science school, I give a course. I've been giving a course for the past 15 years, and some students told me I give a course for the last year students, and one of them a few years ago told me that I was the first professor he had in to speak about the carbon footprint of mining activities. So, well, it's not possible. In the Ecole des Mines de Paris, well, a school which was supposed to be dedicated to to engineering and mining, say something about the huge challenges that we have to face. So, well, just to show that when we give courses, we try to present graphs such as this graph about CO2 in the atmosphere, Then we show great acceleration and many uncertainties, and we show also that it has to see both with Earth system trends, but also social economic trends. We insist on a risk of extinction of species, and we also the donut economics. I imagine that most of you are familiar with the Renouard's work on the donut, and we think that it's a very good and simple, easy way to understand the challenges. And the idea is to be able to promote economic activities and human activities where you respect a social floor and an ecological ceiling, and you try to promote activities respecting what she called the safe living space for people and for living species. And I will go back to the donut because I use this also linking it with some nomos issues related to changing regulations of economic activities and businesses. So that's for the first gate. Then the second one about ethos, discernment and decision making for collective and cooperative well-being. So here we have used Ricoeur, the French philosopher, who speaks about ethics are the search for the good life with and for others in just institutions. If you are interested in Ricoeur's thought, it was translated into English, the title Oneself as One Another, and has what he called the small ethics, where he offers to combine an Aristotelian perspective on the virtue ethics with the deontological perspective, like the categorical imperative, the Kantian imperative, and then what he called practical wisdom, to show that people we have to combine, according to him, ethical and supra-ethical perspective, because there is this reality of absolutely of the evils in every person's life and collective lives. And in this chapter, we try to show that it's not enough to reflect only on justice issues as far as people are concerned, but to have to look for environmental justice. And we offer different kinds of course, we don't, that's why Ricoeur is interesting, because he tries to combine different ethical trends. And we just want to offer students and professors some ethical thoughts and invite everybody to reflect on the current situation from an ethical perspective. And so we also tackle the links between social and ecological injustice. And there is one graph that I like a lot, and maybe you are familiar with this graph, is on the x-axis, horizontal axis, you have the human development indicator, and on the vertical axis, the ecological footprint index, and you see that ideally you should find countries in the right bottom corner where you have a high human development index and a low ecological footprint. And Cuba was the only country within the quadrant till a few years ago, and now even Cuba is not. It says something about the challenges for rich bracket countries to reduce their carbon footprint, and for the countries with a low HDI to try to increase their HDI while keeping the ecological footprint low. And of course, this is not enough to reflect like this, because there are many injustices within each country. So, of course, we can look at global inequalities and see that the richest people in the world are the ones who emit more carbon. So, and I put also Lucas Chancel and Piketty, the World Inequality Report. I think it see that the top 10% in North America, the carbon footprint is like 73 tons per capita. In Europe is like almost 30 tons. And we know that, for example, in France, we have to reduce from, on average, it's a 10 per capita, 10 tons per capita, and we have to reduce to 2 tons per capita. Of course, we are very, very far from this. But it's interesting to see the huge differences among people in each country, because sometimes we say that it's on average 10 in France, and that we have to reduce. But in fact, some people are much more responsible than others. And so at the campus, we try to make people who come very often from wealthy backgrounds more aware of their own and their shared responsibilities on these issues. And then still in the ethos chapter, we also offer a reflection on virtue ethics, saying that it's interesting to reflect from a ethical principles perspective, but we need also to reflect on individual and collective attitudes and to promote, for example, to reflect on ecological virtues such as humility, attention, courage, temperance, hospitality, justice, hope, and so forth. So these moral and spiritual disposition, motivations, and representations that push human beings to transform themselves and to act. And that's why we do think that it's very important to both to speak in terms of what we call at the campus head, heart, and body pedagogy, to say that it's not enough to reflect from a very intellectual perspective on all these issues. We need also try to see how it affects us, how we are all of us vulnerable, and how we can help one another and help others to reflect from this global injustice perspective. And so from this I go to nomos, because when we have discerned about our shared and collective responsibilities, we have to ask ourselves, how can it translate into new regulations and governance principles and actions? So we offer a reflection on metrics, models, and indicators, then on regulations, and then on institutions. And I will just say a word about what the framework it was related to my PhD dissertation, which was about the responsibilities of multinational corporations in developing countries. And I was asking myself, what are the responsibilities? What should multinational corporations be accountable for? And I reflected, and I did some field work in Nigeria and Kenya at the time to study the subsidiaries of Total oil company, Unilever, Lafarge, and Michelin, the tire company. And then I finally proposed a framework with 4 main responsibilities. And that's 2 years ago, I was really not, I'm very critical of the discourse on CSR as corporate social and environmental responsibility. And I suggest to speak of corporate systemic responsibility and combining, as you see, economic and financial, political responsibilities with social, societal, and environmental responsibilities, and to try to see how economic and financial logics go ahead with the social and environmental issues. It means that it's not enough just to set up some norms in terms of social issues and the carbon footprint of the company. We also have to see how the companies create and share the economic and financial values and integrates in this economic and financial responsibility issues related to investment strategies, accounting standards, taxation, and wage issues such as wage distribution. So I wrote about these issues, discussing with people who are experts and practitioners in finance, in big companies or in the finance industry. And my well, the diagnostic that we had working together was it's when companies speak about their commitments as far as climate change is concerned, if they don't tackle issues related to accounting standards and taxation, we won't collectively succeed. There is a gap between what they claim to do and what they can effectively do. So it means that it raises the question of the political responsibility of leaders in these companies, and in order to change the regulations. And in the fieldwork that I did with some other scholars, we try to distinguish what the companies can do directly and how the companies well implements a political responsibility in order. Does it only promote lobbying to preserve private interests on a short-term basis, or can they be like advocates of new regulations? And well, that's a big topic. Then I just see time. It's very fast. Just it's got interpreting, critiquing, and imagining. So trying to interpret the narrative, for example, of sustainable development, the rationalities that are behind the discourse of companies, of states, and all over the world, and the clash of rationalities in different areas. Of course, we can use movies, and I could have had added like don't look at ways of helping people realize that there is a problem and that we don't want to look at the problem. And also here, this is the French. I was a member of the board of the French Development Agency for 3 years, and it was very challenging then on how they present issues related to SDGs. And here they want to show that it will be 100% Paris Agreement consistent with, and 100% related to lien social, so quality of relationship. But in fact, if we analyze the discourse on sustainable development, we see that there is a win-win perspective, which is inconsistent with some of the SDGs are contradictory. For example, 7 and 8 can speak of regrowth and access to energy for all. And in fact, well, we could discuss about this, but so we wanted in this chapter to offer a critical perspective on the narratives, on the words that are used by different types of institutions. We can highlight also the role of humanities in order to reflect, and I would say humanities are of course social sciences, in order to deal with economic and climate change issues. And like here, there is a quotation from Martin Nussbaum's book on poetic justice, but there are many other possible references. And finally, about logos, we use. I discovered when I was at Schumacher College before creating the campus. I spent a few months at Schumacher College, and I discovered the Three Horizons approach. Maybe some of you are familiar with this approach. Bill Sharp, who is what the research director of HP, and then he conceived this approach in order. It's like a perspective, and there's 3 horizons: horizon 1, 2, and 3, which are 3 ways to look at the situation today, in the future. And horizon 2 is how you go from 1 to 3. But he also says that these are 3 different ways to look at our current realities, and acknowledge that there are some some pockets of the horizon 3 in the H1 situation today. For example, campus, when in our eco place, we try to reduce our carbon footprint. And in a way, some of the low carbon technologies that we use say something about the possible future at a larger scale. But of course, it's not the business as usual. It's not H1 is not consistent with global challenges. So the idea is we have to reduce the H1 business as usual actions, try to make sure that H3 trajectories are envisioned, and the H2 perspective is how can we conceive regulation steps that can be taken by individuals and organizations and institutions in order to go to make sure that we will be consistent with the global challenges. So quickly, I say something about praxis is actors and levels of action, form of social organization of labor that are changing and reflecting on individual and collective action. And we reflect a little bit on violence and use on environmental conflicts and different diverse forms of commitment and activism. I think right now there are a lot of debates on scientists, for example, rebellion movements, and and we thought that it was important to propose a reflection on this in the handbook, because even the climate sciences and climate science, these are also social constructs. So we have to say that there are social consequences of the research. So here is how we have to reduce our carbon footprints on different aspects of our day-to-day lives, related to mobility, housing, private services, food, and of course there is part of the change that has to come from public authorities and changing public policies. We have also maps and all these resources on environmental conflicts. And then I finally go to the dynamics gate, which has to see with different ways to move from resilience to also transformability, and reconnect and help people find ways to reconnect with themselves, with others, and with nature. And I just propose here that's related to fieldwork that I did in Nigeria, in the Niger Delta, and to see that how to reflect on the collective ability of people. Here you see women who are demonstrating peacefully to ask Ajit, but it could have been Shell or Total, to ask for a better life, and saying that they were forgotten in the way that the MOUs that are signed between oil companies and local villages. And just so I have to go quickly, but we try to reflect in the French context. It's quite a sensitive issue to reflect on eco-psychology and eco-spirituality, because in France, when we some of the scholars with whom we wrote the handbook, they said they were some physicians, for example, and when we were speaking about spirituality, they were telling us, well, it will be esoteric, and you cannot, in the French laicite perspective, people were really afraid of dealing with these issues. And we were convinced that if you envision spirituality as the meaning of life, everybody is concerned by this perspective. And you have also, and many people all around the world belong to a certain spiritual or religious tradition, and it's important to offer a reflection on this and show how religions and spiritualities have also a role to play as far as ecological issues are concerned. So, and we used a little the framework proposed by Joanna Macy. I don't know whether you know Joanna Macy and work that reconnects perspective. Joanna Macy is an American biologist, and she, in her personal life, she converted to Buddhism. And in fact, but she was a scholar, and she realized that she was strongly against nuclear weapons. And when she wanted to help people reflect on these issues, she saw that for some scientists with whom she was working, they were just in their head, and they had feelings, but they had no words to express their feelings. And she offered them to reflect from another perspective with different pedagogical tools. And she realized that it was very helpful for them. And they told her that it was great. And so she began to propose exercises for different kinds of people. And then now the work that reconnects is a perspective, a non-denominational perspective, with four main steps. The first one is about gratitude, acknowledging together that we receive everything from one another, that we are not, nobody is the source of his or her own life. So first we receive, and then the second step is acknowledging that there is the pain of the world, that there is suffering, that there is violence, and trying to reflect on our attitudes, inner attitudes, in front of this suffering. The third step is looking at the world differently, envisioning things in not only from a win-win perspective, for example. And then the fourth step is taking action, really. And in fact, we decided at the campus to also promote some of the exercises that are suggested by Joanna Macy, because these can be useful tools to help people. And sometimes people are in France very much in their head. And we have to try to see how it has to touch our hearts and the way we act, not only saying things that we have to change, but yes, we change in our day-to-day life. So that's it for the 6 gates approach. And now, but maybe I can just say a word about the pedagogy small textbook. But I will be very brief, because I think it will be interesting to hear ideas about these different issues. So, the good news is that the Springer will publish the English translation of the textbook soon. So the title will be Pedagogy of the Anthropocene Epoch for a Great Transition, and with 3 parts, but the contextualization, then the head part, body pedagogy, and promote examples of what some higher education institutions offer, and share ideas and experiences. And I just mentioned like eco-campus laboratories, such as the Campus de la Transition in France. Myself, and to create the campus, I was inspired by the Schumacher College experience. It was founded by Satish Kumar, who is an Indian, like 30 years ago. And now the Schumacher College is related to the Plymouth University of Plymouth. And in South Africa, the Sustainability Institute was created 20 years ago. And it was also linked with the Stellenbosch University. And there may be other laboratories like this in other countries, but and I think more and more universities and scholars are reflecting on creating such initiatives. And then you have like the ones with whom we have had links, the Lausanne University in Switzerland. They try to promote the change of the curricula, and ESSEC Business School, the school where I graduated from, and where I had created this research program. They have an initiative, but even if they are very well ranked on these issues, we see that there is a lot to do because I would say because the way professors are evaluated, evaluation criteria are completely at odds with what should be done in order to promote inter and transdisciplinarity. So to say something on what we try to promote for this renewed pedagogy, inter and transdisciplinarity approach, the relational and transformative pedagogy, and how we look at the ways how the disciplines that are taught, how they help young people and people reflect on concrete transformation. Then a rooted and open pedagogy means that I think here in this room we represent different cultures. And of course, the pedagogical tools won't be exactly the same according to the context. And even the way we reflect on social and ecological justice will be different depending on the countries where we are located. And then integrative and holistic pedagogy, the idea of not only we're combining body, emotions, motivation, intelligence, and different aspects of our person and our existence at an individual but also a collective level. And so finally, I go back to the skills for the great transition. So we try to reflect on the skills that are directly linked with the games. And it was interesting to see that it was completely consistent with the frameworks used. Maybe you are more familiar with UNESCO perspective. There also Peter Tenge also, and in France, who are familiar with the Conférence des grandes écoles et France Université, the conference of presidents of universities, they also they offer a framework where they say that we have to teach and to help young people acquire these skills. And so in the small handbook on pedagogy, we reflected on the levers to operate, stimulate the learner's curiosity and commitment, promote learning in relation to sensitive experience, combining reasoning, emotions, and mobilization of values, develop the multifaceted posture of the teacher, and integrate self-awareness and striving for the common good in the curriculum. And just to give you some examples of the tools that we use at the campus. We use educational games on planetary boundaries. I don't know whether you are familiar with the Fresque du Climat, in English, climate fresque, which is an interesting tool in order to help people have a diagnostic on the ecological urgency. Then the sphere horizons approach can be used in terms of reflecting on the ethical dilemma. What are our common goals, the H3 perspective, and what are the best ways to promote the change of H3, and what Martin Vivot called the tragical dilemma. I think we have to face many tragical dilemmas in our day-to-day lives, and not only from a personal but also collective perspective. Then to reflect on changing the regulations and the way we look at business strategies or public policies, we can use new indicators. Of course, here you have all the work done by OFI about missing dimensions of poverty. And myself, with a team of researchers for the past 15 years, we are reflecting on and set up a relational capability index to look at the situation of territories and business activities from a quality relations perspective. Then on logos, we try to help people develop creative work on imagination, on imaginaries. On praxis, there are many ideas that can be developed. And Arthur de Lassis, who is a young engineer who joined the campus, and he is a maraîcher, he grows vegetables just next to the campus. He's also a great teacher, and he has conceived, he's currently conceiving pedagogical games, such as the decarbonized horizons approach, to help people look at decarbonized society in 2050 and look at what could be the life with a two ton carbon footprint in 2050, and reflect on the changes in the day-to-day life of individuals, and also reflect on the changes in terms of energy mix and in terms of public policies. Well, and on dynamics society like work balance. So I think well, and we have a 4 years agreement with Cergy Paris University on accompanying them on changing their curricula. So Christine, I can say the word about this experience. And then there is just, we try to sum up what we try to do with them. And maybe I will finish with this, because we give the floor to the questions.
Thank you very much.